I was working the front desk at a small hotel in Prague when an American family walked in, map in hand. The dad pointed at our building on his phone and said, "We need to get to this hotel." I looked at him. "Sir, you're already here." He shook his head. "No, we need the hotel in Prague." I paused. "This is Prague. You're in the Czech Republic." His wife jumped in. "We flew into Prague, Texas last month. This is Europe, Prague." The way she said it, like there were two Pragues and we were the backup location. I had to walk them outside and point at the actual Prague castle in the distance before it clicked. That wasn't even the wildest one that month. A woman asked me where she could find a good Texas-style barbecue place in the city center. When I suggested Czech cuisine instead, she looked genuinely hurt. But I read Prague was very American-friendly. I didn't have the heart to tell her that didn't mean we'd copied her hometown. 3 days later, a college kid asked if he could pay his bill in dollars. I explained we use Czech koruna. He pulled out a $50 bill and waved it. "Yeah, but this is worth more, right? It's American." The math he tried to do in his head to prove the dollar was superior to all currencies was something I still think about. Then there was the guy who got genuinely upset that our address system didn't use cardinal directions. How am I supposed to find anything without north, south, east, west? He kept turning his phone, waiting for the GPS to say something like, "Head northeast." When I explained Europeans just use street names and numbers, he asked to speak to someone who understood navigation. But that was just the beginning. See, I started keeping a mental list after Prague. I moved to Berlin for work, then spent a summer in Thailand, and eventually ended up back in Sweden where I grew up. And everywhere I went, the stories kept coming. Not because Americans are bad travelers. Most are curious, friendly, excited to be there. But somewhere between their driveway and international airspace, a wire gets crossed. They miss things, small things, big things, things that make locals stop and stare, things that make you realize just how much of the world exists outside one country's bubble. I was working as a museum guide in Amsterdam when a middle-aged American couple stopped me near the Rembrandt section. The husband pointed at the painting labels. "Excuse me, do you have these in English?" I gestured to the label he was pointing at. "Sir, that is in English." He leaned closer, squinting. "No, I mean American English. This says color with a U." His wife nodded seriously. "We can't really understand British spelling. It's too different." They wanted me to translate English to English. I stood there trying to figure out if they were joking. They weren't. I ended up just reading the labels out loud, pronouncing color as color and center as center, and they thanked me for being so helpful. The Dutch teenagers behind them were taking videos. A few months later, I was working a summer job at a beach cafe in Costa Brava, Spain. An American woman in her 30s ordered a coffee around 11 a.m. Simple enough, but when I brought it to her, she looked confused. "Where's the rest of it?" I didn't understand. "Ma'am, that's an espresso. That's the standard coffee here." She held up the tiny cup. "This is like 2 sips. I asked for a coffee." I explained that in Spain, this was coffee. If she wanted more, she could order an Americano. She got defensive. I shouldn't have to specify American coffee in a coffee shop. Coffee means a full cup. She ended up ordering 4 espressos and pouring them into her water bottle, because that's a normal amount. The Spanish couple next to her watched in fascinated silence. I picked up translation work in Tokyo during cherry blossom season. That's when I met the business traveler who couldn't understand train announcements. He was maybe 45 in a full suit, looking stressed at Shibuya Station. He asked me why the announcements weren't in English. I told him they were. Every third announcement, he shook his head. "I've been standing here 20 minutes. It's all Japanese." I waited with him. Sure enough, the next announcement came in Japanese, then English, then Chinese. He looked stunned. That was English. It didn't sound like English. The accent had thrown him so completely that he'd filtered it out as foreign language. I had to repeat the English announcement in my American accent before he accepted what it said. He missed his train 3 times because he kept waiting for it to sound right. That same spring, I was helping my cousin run his food stall in Singapore's hawker center. An American college student, maybe 21, approached and studied our menu like it was written in code. "Do you have anything normal?" I asked what he meant, like regular food. Chicken fingers, fries, a burger? I gestured around at the dozens of stalls. "This is regular food. It's Singaporean cuisine." He looked genuinely lost. "But what do normal people eat?" He meant white Americans. He didn't say it, but that's what he meant. I suggested the chicken rice, one of the most popular dishes in the country. He ordered it, took one bite, and asked if we had ketchup. My cousin just walked away. He couldn't watch. Later that year, I was working at a hostel in Reykjavik when an American gap year traveler checked in. She was 19, excited, full of energy. During check-in, she asked what state Iceland was in. I blinked. "It's a country," she laughed. "I know, but which U.S. state is it near?" I pulled up a map and showed her Iceland, the island nation in the North Atlantic. She zoomed out on her phone, then back in, then out again. "Wait, it's not connected to anything?" She'd thought Iceland was maybe near Alaska, like a territory. When I explained we have our own language, government, and currency, she got quiet. "So you're like, fully separate?" It was the way she said it, like independence from the United States was a strange life choice we'd made. She apologized 5 times and admitted U.S. schools barely taught world geography. I appreciated the honesty. At least, I was working the reception desk at a thermal spa in Budapest when an American retiree, maybe 68, walked up in a bathing suit. He was holding a towel and looking annoyed. "Your change rooms are mixed gender. That's illegal." I explained that in Hungary, many spas have mixed thermal baths, but separate changing areas. He cut me off. "In America, we have laws about this." I nodded politely. "Yes, in America. But this is Hungary. We have different customs." He didn't like that answer. Laws are laws. They should be universal. He wanted to file a complaint with someone. I asked who he thought he should complain to. He said, "The manager, the embassy, whoever's in charge." He genuinely believed American standards applied everywhere, automatically. Eventually, his wife came out and gently explained how international borders work. He still looked skeptical when they left. A few months later, I was driving a taxi in Dublin when I picked up an American digital nomad. She was maybe 32, laptop bag over her shoulder, very confident. She asked why Ireland didn't just use pounds like the UK. I explained that Ireland uses euros, and we're an independent country, she nodded, but then said, "Right, but you're like British adjacent, so wouldn't pounds be easier?" I tried to explain the whole history. Independence in 1922, joining the EU, the currency switch in 2002. She kept interrupting. "But you speak English, so you're basically British." I asked if Canada was basically American. She paused. "That's different." I asked how. She didn't have an answer, but she also didn't accept that Ireland was fully separate from Britain. When I dropped her off, she tipped me in pounds. I'm not sure if that was ignorance or a power move. I was working at a pharmacy in Lyon, France, when an American woman in her 40s came in with a prescription. She handed it to me and waited. I looked at it. It was from a doctor in Florida. I explained, as gently as possible, that we couldn't fill American prescriptions here. She looked confused. "Why not? It's from a licensed doctor." I explained that medical licensing is national, sometimes regional. Her doctor had no authority in France. She got frustrated. "But I need this medication. It's the same medication everywhere." I told her she'd need to see a French doctor. She raised her voice. "That's ridiculous. A prescription is a prescription." Other customers were staring. I called my manager, who explained the same thing in French-accented English. The woman left angry, muttering about how Europe makes everything complicated. The medication she wanted? Ibuprofen available over the counter in France without any prescription. That summer, I was working as a tour guide in Nairobi, Kenya, when an American family joined my safari group. The dad, maybe 43, kept asking about Africa stuff. Not Kenyan stuff. Africa stuff, like the continent, was one place. He asked if we could visit a traditional village on the way back. Asked which culture he wanted to learn about. Kenya has over 40 ethnic groups. He looked blank. Just, African. I tried to explain the diversity, but he kept circling back to wanting something authentic. What he meant was matching the National Geographic photos he'd seen. When we passed Nairobi's modern downtown, skyscrapers and traffic and shopping malls, he said, "This doesn't feel very African." His teenage daughter looked like she wanted to disappear. I didn't push it. Some lessons you can't force. He was working the front desk at a university in Melbourne when an American exchange student came in to register. He was 20, friendly, excited to be there. During paperwork, he asked when we'd convert his grades to the American system. I explained that Australian universities use a different scale, and his homeschool would do the conversion. He frowned. "But how will I know if I'm getting A's?" I showed him our grading rubric. High distinction, distinction, credit, pass, fail. He stared at it. "This doesn't make sense. Where's the ABC?" I explained that not every country uses letters. He got genuinely anxious. "So, how do I know if I'm doing good?" I told him high distinction was the top mark. He asked what percentage that was. I said usually 80% and above. He laughed in relief. "Oh, so that's easy. In America, 90% is an A." His face fell 3 weeks later when he got his first essay back with a 72%, and realized Australian grading was stricter. He came back to my desk asking if there was a mistake. There wasn't. Welcome to the rest of the world, kid. I was working at a train station in Stockholm when an American backpacker, maybe 25, approached the ticket counter. She wanted to buy a ticket to wherever the northern lights are. I asked if she meant Swedish Lapland. She shrugged. "I guess I just want to see the lights tonight." I had to explain that the northern lights aren't guaranteed, aren't in one location, and you definitely can't just train there in an afternoon from Stockholm. She looked devastated. "But I'm only here 2 days." I asked why she didn't research. This before arriving, she admitted she thought Europe was small enough to just figure it out. She'd imagined hopping on a train after lunch and being under the aurora by dinner. When I showed her the map, how far North Lapland was, she went pale. "That's like Texas-sized." Yes, it is. She bought a train ticket to Uppsala instead, which was an hour away and had a nice castle. Sometimes you adjust expectations on the fly. A month later, I was working at a post office in Mexico City when an American teacher, maybe 51, came in with a huge box. She wanted to mail it to Iowa. Standard request, but when I told her the cost in pesos, she tried to negotiate. "That seems high. Can you do half that?" I explained that shipping prices were fixed, not negotiable. She smiled like she was being clever. "But I'm a teacher. Don't you have discounts?" I told her no. She asked to speak to the manager. My manager came out, heard the situation, and quoted the exact same price. The woman got annoyed. "In America, you can always find a deal." My manager just said, "This is Mexico." The woman paid full price, but kept muttering about customer service. The Mexican grandmother behind her in line rolled her eyes so hard. I thought she'd strained something. I picked up work at a bank in Marrakesh, Morocco during tourist season. An American honeymoon couple, both around 28, came in to exchange money. Simple enough, but the husband got confused when I handed him Moroccan dirhams. "These don't look real." I assured him they were official currency. He held one up to the light. "But there's Arabic on it. How do stores know what it's worth?" I didn't know where to start. I explained that Arabic was one of Morocco's official languages. So, yes, it was on the money. He wasn't satisfied. "Don't you have English versions for tourists?" His wife looked embarrassed, but didn't correct him. I told him this was what money looked like in Morocco. Everyone used it. It was real. He finally accepted it, but pocketed the bills like they were monopoly money. I wondered how he thought the rest of the world functioned. That winter, I was working at a ski resort in the Swiss Alps when an American businessman, maybe 47, got upset about the temperature signs. Why does everything say -20? It's not that cold. I explained that Switzerland uses Celsius. He waved that off. Yeah, but what is it actually? I did the conversion, -4 Fahrenheit. His face changed. That's freezing. Why didn't you say so? I pointed at the sign. We did. In Celsius. He wanted to know why the resort didn't post Fahrenheit for international guests. I asked if he knew that America was one of only 3 countries still using Fahrenheit. He didn't believe me. He pulled out his phone and Googled it right there. Liberia, Myanmar, and the United States. He looked offended, like the rest of the world had conspired. Behind his back. That can't be right. It was. He spent his whole ski trip manually converting temperatures and complaining about it. I was working at a grocery store in Auckland, New Zealand, when an American expat, maybe 36, came through my line. She'd been living there 3 months. She asked why we didn't have American-style outlets in the store for charging phones. I pointed to the New Zealand outlets on the wall. She sighed. I meant the normal kind. I reminded her that she was in New Zealand now, so these were the normal kind. She got defensive. I just think it's weird that you expect everyone to carry adapters. I didn't argue. Some expats adjust fast. Some take years. Some never do. She left, still calling New Zealand outlets weird, even though she'd chosen to move there. A Kiwi guy behind her in line just smiled at me. She'll get there, he said, or she'll go home. Both outcomes seemed equally likely. I was working at a border crossing between Poland and Ukraine when an American military veteran, maybe 55, pulled up in a rental car. He'd driven from Warsaw and wanted to cross into Ukraine for a day trip. Standard enough, except he didn't have a passport. He showed me his driver's license. This should work. It's a federal ID, I explained. That crossing international borders requires a passport? He didn't accept that. I've crossed state lines hundreds of times with just this. I tried to clarify the difference between states and countries. He cut me off. A border is a border. He genuinely believed his Michigan driver's license held the same weight as a passport, because both were government-issued. When I refused him entry, he asked for my supervisor. My supervisor said the same thing. The veteran sat in his car for 15 minutes, visibly frustrated, before turning around. As he left, he rolled down his window and said, "This wouldn't happen in America." And you know what? He was right. In America, you can cross state lines with a driver's license, but that's not because borders don't matter. It's because those aren't borders, not the real kind. That story stuck with me because it wasn't about arrogance or ignorance. Not really. It was about the bubble, the invisible wall that forms when you grow up in a place so big, so dominant, so self-contained, that the rest of the world feels theoretical. Americans aren't uniquely close-minded, but they're uniquely insulated. Most people grow up knowing they'll need to adapt to other systems, other languages, other rules. Americans grow up assuming the world will adapt to them, and sometimes it does, but not always. Not at train stations in Sweden, or pharmacies in France, or border crossings in Poland. The thing is, most Americans don't even realize they're missing anything. They're not trying to be difficult. They're just shocked that their normal isn't everyone's normal. And when you've spent your whole life in a country that calls itself the world stage, it's hard to accept that you're actually just one actor in a much, much bigger play. The world doesn't revolve around American standards. It never did. But until you leave, until you stand in a Prague hotel lobby insisting you're not in Prague yet, or hold Moroccan money wondering if it's real, you might not ever know that. And these stories? They never stop coming, because every day, someone boards a plane from Dallas or Seattle or Boston, lands in a country they've barely researched, and discovers that the world is bigger, stranger, and less American than they ever imagined. Sometimes they adjust. Sometimes they complain. Sometimes they learn. And sometimes they just ask for ketchup and hope for the best.